Hey everybody, welcome to What's Up Wednesday. I'd like to talk or I'd like to present tips for job seekers today in this What's Up Wednesday. And I'm going to start it off with kind of a statement. At ISS, we do a fair amount of public bid work, meaning that a request for proposal or RFP is issued by a public entity, and then we bid that opportunity and hopefully win it. Now, generally, an RFP is going to be issued via whatever platform that the customer uses, and it's going to have different attachments. And I would say the average RFP is probably about 60 pages. And I think that the RFP serves kind of two primary purposes. One is it kind of creates a guideline of what your proposal needs to look like, how many pages it can be, how it's formatted, whether there are blank pages between sections, and that creates consistency across the different bidders to make sure they're getting the same product. It also outlines specifically what they want covered. And that creates what's called a rubric, which allows them to evaluate each of the bidders on level playing ground. Now, I think that the bigger purpose of the way that they write these RFPs is to determine whether or not we can follow instructions. And if we can't follow instructions, then our bid is kicked out immediately. When it comes to job seekers, I'm seeing something very consistently, and I think that it needs to be pointed out because it is it's kind of the kiss of death for a job seeker when they do these things. So if you see a job posted, whether it's on Indeed.com or LinkedIn, wherever it might be, generally there's some kind of an announcement that we have a job and there's a link to a job. And the idea is that the job seeker needs to click on that link and follow the instructions. So often I'm seeing job seekers saying, I'm interested, where do I send a resume? They're not even taking 2 seconds to click on that job and go look at the instructions. So ultimately, they're immediately excluded from that job because they can't follow instructions. And I see this all the time. It drives me absolutely nuts. But I also know that the companies looking to fill those jobs, they want to know whether or not the candidates can follow basic instructions. And again, obviously, much of the time they can't. They say, I'm interested, or they like it, or something along those lines. Now, the second piece of that is the way that job seekers are submitting their resume for a job. Now, it could be as simple as the job posting has the outline of the requirements, what they're looking for, and it says email resumes here. It amazes me at how often I see somebody email in a resume, and it just, when you open the email, there's a resume attachment and nothing. I've talked about this before. No body, no introduction, nothing. Again, immediately excluded, kicked out, eliminated. And, on top of that, not only should the job seeker attach some kind of a cover letter, or ideally just put it in the body of the email, very professional, polished, introducing themselves, thanking the company for the opportunity to submit their resume, expressing interest in the job, and maybe just a couple sentences on why you're qualified. I think that's absolutely critical because, believe it or not, that used to be the norm, the standard. Everybody did that. They don't today. Therefore, it makes you as a job seeker stand out from everybody else when you do those things. I think that's a really big deal. And then the third little tip that kind of goes with that is the fact that, and I've mentioned this before, in general, resumes are absolutely horrendous. It's amazing to me how people will literally cut and paste their work experience and accomplishments from one job to the next, to the next, to the next. As you read down, it's the same thing over and over and over again. This is your advertising, your marketing, your brochure. If you can't write a resume, if you aren't good with formatting in Microsoft Word, whatever it might be, there are a lot of services out there and individuals who will put together your resume for you for $200-300. It's well worth the spend, and it's going to look a whole lot better. But the one thing I will say is that the people who kind of create those resumes, beautify them, make them pop, they aren't going to be the people who are creating the content. The content needs to come from you. So it's really important that you modify the content of each of your jobs or work experience on what you accomplished and kind of what your duties were. They don't, sometimes people have a novel of what they did. I don't think it needs to be that complicated. It just needs to be something very simple. Here was my role. Here were my responsibilities. Here's what I accomplished. And that's it. It could be 3, 4 sentences or 5 or 6 bullet points. But ultimately, that needs to be on the resume and it needs to be specific to each job in your work history. Now, I always recommend that as you update a resume, save a new date so that you have all of your old resumes going backwards. Usually a employer wants to see the most recent 5 or 6 jobs, but there may be cases where they need to see that you have 20 years of safety experience. So you need to be able to build a comprehensive resume with all of your experience going all the way back to when you graduated high school. Really important. And then the final thing is every resume, I know this is a pain in the butt and it's a lot of work, but for each individual job, the resume needs to be tweaked and tailored specifically to that opportunity. If you're applying for a job where you're going to be doing heavy civil dirt moving work or pipeline work, maybe industrial work in a refinery or a power plant, the resume needs to look different for all of those. And you need to really tailor your experience to outline that it fits what they're looking for in this specific role. Now, if you follow my tips and you do these things, the chances that you're going to be interviewed for these jobs is much, much higher than if you don't follow my advice. The next piece might be, how you interview, how you come prepared to an interview. And I'll think about that for next week. I might kind of do a refresher update on interviewing skills and approach and do what I can to try to help job seekers. But keep in mind, determining whether somebody can follow instructions is a pretty simple and basic tool that an employer uses to screen out candidates. So don't be that person who says, I'm interested, or where do I send my resume? Follow the instructions. Make sure that when you submit your resume, you have some kind of an introductory letter or body of email, and make sure that you tweak or custom tailor your resume to each individual opportunity. Hopefully that helps. We'll see you next Wednesday.